Project for today is going to be my old MTD race mower. As you saw in the intro, I used to do drag racing with this one. I think that video was from like 2016, something like that. They quit doing the races for insurance purposes, so I ended up just parking this thing and putting a tarp over it for, I think it probably 8 to 10 years it's been sitting now. And the tarp deteriorated off of it, and you could see we were growing some stuff out of the seat here. And the carburetor was covered though, so even when the tarp was off it, the carburetor was covered, so the engine does still turn over. I didn't build this engine. This is it started out as an 11 and a half horse engine, and then they did some porting work on it, and then on a lot of these guys would take head off of a 10 horse and they would put it on. They had a smaller chamber, so you would increase your compression, which then I actually did run race fuel in this. We're not going to do that today. We'll just run regular fuel in it, but I don't know how much horsepower it actually ended up making, but it would go around 30 miles an hour in 600 feet, which was pretty good for most any of the race mowers that were there. So I ended up getting a few trophies with it. I got first place, I think 2 or 3 times with it out of like probably 10-15 entrants that we're racing against. But I'll get you set up and we'll probably pull the carburetor off at first. I know the gas tank didn't look very good in it, and it does actually look like we got some hairline cracking, so hopefully that doesn't leak. But I'll get you set up, we'll get that carburetor pulled off. So I did a little bit of cleaning on it before we'll get started. I vacuumed off the floorboards and I got some of that mold stuff off of there, but someday maybe I'll tear it all down and redo it. It actually looked really nice at one point. I'll see if I can find a picture of it that I can put on the screen. Boy, that's looking pretty corroded in there. I don't know if this carburetor will be savable or not, but I do have another one that I can try if this one is not good. And this mower has the variable pulley style transmission, so that actually worked really well. It was almost like having an automatic. Oh, I just lost my return spring for my throttle, because it has a foot throttle on it. So here you can kind of see how it's polished in there. Where this has been ported, they widen these ports out. You get more air in the intake side, and you'll get more exhaust flow. That's one reason that it's got a completely straight pipe. We found that I had an exhaust that ran down and went underneath the mower, and every 90-degree bend you put in it, you would lose horsepower. I would lose speed in the 600 feet whenever we tested with GPS. So I lost like 2 or 3 miles an hour by having 190 in it and going down to a straight pipe. So this is a stainless steel pipe that I ended up putting on here. It's super loud, but that seemed to give me the best power ratio. So I don't know if all race engines would be that way, or if it's just these smaller engines you notice it more when you're trying to get every little bit of horsepower out of them. So it looks like I had a screw in here holding that throttle cable. It's been so long, I don't even remember really what I had going on here. I remember this throttle cable was actually off of like a weed whip, and I've got a piece of wire in here as a retainer. I got that out of there. I'm not sure how this got bent over, if that was from when it was sitting, if something fell on top of it or what, but that does unscrew. We'll take that out of there. I never ran it with an air cleaner either. That was another thing that would actually make you lose horsepower, as you restrict the air at all. but we were just running them in the winter time anyway, so it wasn't as big a deal. This choke is super loose too. It's missing the, there should be a screw or something in there that is missing, so that might be a problem. I can hear the float moving a little bit, but we'll get this cleaned up on the outside a little bit, and then I'll get it on the bench and we'll tear into it, see what it looks like. Oh yeah, that thing had got some water in it. Oof, that is terrible. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to use that other carburetor I've got. Hopefully that one's better. You can see how it crushed the float. I don't know if it was just common to these Briggs, but I found a couple of them like this. They get water in them, and then in the winter time it freezes and it crushes the float. You can see how crusty that is. That's terrible. So this one is pretty much not savable. I mean, I could, but it would take more work than it's worth. I might end up, depending on the condition of the other carburetor, I could steal the float out of it and the float bowl, because that is terrible. But I'll go grab that other one, we'll see what that looks like. So here's the other one I had. I just wanted to make sure that the port sizing looks the same. So I just had this laying around. I'm not sure what it's exactly off of, but it looks like it should be about the same. So let's see what this one looks like inside. Well, that's looking very promising compared to the other one. You can see the difference of the two. Well, yeah, that's really clean in there actually. But we're missing the needle off of, and the pin from the float. So that one is not going to come out of there very easy if I need that pin off of the float. But I should have a needle, I think, for this. Oh, here's the needle right here. It fell out. I don't know why. Somebody must have just stole the pin out of it. They needed that piece or something. I'll take this adjustment screw out. I'll count the turns. It's a little more than 2.5 turns. That looks really clean too. I think this one I might just throw together and see what we get. That looks like it's in really good shape. The needle seat in there actually looks like somebody replaced that. So I'll spray some carb clean through everything, and I'll find that pin and we'll throw it together and see if it'll fire off with this one in there. So I found a pin that should work. It's a little buggered on the end. That's probably why I didn't put it back in a customer's machine, but that should work. And we'll test the needle and see how that holds. That holds good. I like them to hold at least 5 pounds on these gravity flow fuel systems. I did spray carb clean through everything. We're gonna have to do some adjusting on this carburetor, I'm sure, once we get it going, but so we got that put back together. Now we'll have to address that fuel line. I had my throttle off of this side, so I could do that the same again. But we'll have to address that fuel tank and that fuel line before I put this back on there. That was in pretty bad shape, and I need to put a fuel shut off on it. This one, I know the carb did leak if I didn't shut the fuel off. I think that's why I had that fuel shut off on there, but I like to have them on everything just in case you do have a scenario where something leaks. So in order to get this fuel line off, I got to get underneath the tank here. Get this clamp off. That's really stuck on there, but this fuel line is kind of petrified. There we go. Get that off there. I'm still debating whether I should take this tank off all the way or not. It does have some junk in there, but I might try flushing it out with it on there. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to. I've got this hood deal that I made on here. I'll have to unbolt it here and slide that all forward. This is the front bumper off of a Polaris, like a Trail Boss 250 that I took off, and then we were basically just trying to save weight because you couldn't do anything else with the horsepower with the class we were in. We were in a 11.5 horse super stock, so you could build the motor and do whatever with your gearing and stuff, but you still had to have 11.5 horse stock engine you started with. So the only thing we could do at a certain point was just cut weight to get faster. So I rigged up this to replace the hood, since this one actually did have a steel hood on it that was fairly heavy, and this cut like 5 pounds off of the weight of the machine. This is diamond plate aluminum here, and then this stuff is super thin metal, and then this is a really thin sheet of sheet metal here, and then this was just some square tubing. I think this was actually from like a garage door or something like that. Basically built this whole thing out of just scrap parts. That was kind of my goal, is to not really spend money on this. I think the belts was the main thing that I ended up spending money on. But I'll flush that gas tank out, and then we'll put a gas line on it, and then we'll put that carburetor back on there. So I flushed the tank out, and it really wasn't that bad actually. I thought it was going to be worse than that. There was a few chunks of things that came out of there, but nothing terrible. I think most of the gas just evaporated. We ran 110 octane fuel in these, but I'm just going to run some 91 premium in it for now. That stuff back then even was pretty expensive, so I don't even know what it would be now. I haven't bought it in so long, but you could buy a couple gallons and race for a couple weekends on it though. These weren't super hard on fuel. So I'm just going to run a new gas line. Up underneath to the tank. I'll have to get under here with the pliers, or get the clamp. And I think I'll just leave that without cutting it. Well, I'll cut it here, I guess, and put the fuel shut-off in. The problem is I only have one of these 90-degree ones. I don't have the straight through, I don't think. I might go look and see if I have a straight through one. Otherwise, it's going to end up kind of weird with a bend out of it. There, I found I had a new one. It's a 120-212 Sten's part number if you're looking for a shut-off like that. I wouldn't recommend buying the cheap Amazon ones or anything. They're pretty crappy, most of them. They end up leaking around here, or they actually fall apart. Even these Sten's ones are not the greatest. It's kind of hard to find one that's any good anymore. So I'll just cut it probably here, and then we'll put a clamp on there. These do have a direction of flow arrow on them, so you want to make sure you're going the right direction. So you got that on there. Then I'll do a short piece to a fuel filter, and then we'll go to the carb after that. So I've got the fuel filter on there. We'll put the carburetor on there now, so then I can measure what we need for fuel line up to the carb. Oh, I do need to put that, figure out how that throttle cable was in there, because this one has like a bushing in there. I'm gonna have to try to push that bushing out and then put that throttle cable through, because I don't think it fit through. Yeah, it doesn't fit through with that bushing. So pop that plastic bushing out of there. I know it went something like that. So I'll put this back on there. I'm not quite sure how I had it adjusted. Might have been, might have to pull it back a little bit. I'm just looking at the foot pedal over there to see how far I pulled it up, because I don't want it to be like over center where I'm trying to push. That seems okay. Then I'll have to get that piece of wire back around it. I think I just had it slid through the hole here, so it wasn't able to, the throttle cable wasn't able to slide out of there. This isn't really the best setup, but like I said, I was building this pretty much. I didn't want to spend any money on it. The belts were expensive enough, actually. But once I got the setup, then it wasn't so bad. I just needed to, I bought a lot of belts when I was changing gearing and testing and stuff. So that'd be like that. And then I should be able to put the carb on, and then I'll do that return spring on the throttle too. That's another thing too, is when you convert these to a foot throttle, you really want to make sure you have a good strong return spring so your throttle doesn't end up sticking. And it's pretty much everything about these things was dangerous, because we didn't upgrade the brakes, which is dangerous when you can go over 30 miles an hour on a lawnmower. Some of the ones there was different classes where they put snowmobile engines and dirt bike engines in them and stuff too, but those ones you took a little bit more money to build, so that's why I ended up sticking with this class. And back then these motors and stuff were a dime a dozen. I'm not sure why we're not going back all the way. That's pretty close. I think I'll adjust it a little bit more. Just to make sure we can get back to idle. I'll show you the foot pedal setup over here, which I kind of figured that would be a little bit sticky. I might have to rig up a spring on this because it doesn't quite pull back unless I do that. But everything probably just needs lube. But I thought I did have a spring on this at one point. I hooked it down from like here to here or something like that. So we'll run the fuel line up to the carb now. So about like that should be plenty. Throw a couple clamps on there. And I never ran the choke cable. I pretty much just reached down and flipped the choke. It was very minimalist. There's no battery in it. I didn't have the key switch and stuff was not working. You did have to have a tether. So I've got the tether basically for my kill switch. And I do believe the key still shut it off too, but the tether, just in case you fell off, it would kill it. So that was a safety feature that was in the rules you had to have. So I think we should be, I'm gonna check the oil real quick and we should be good to see if it'll fire up. I don't know what they had going on with this pipe here. Like I said, this motor was out of another race mower that I had bought from a guy. I just wanted we still got oil in there. The other thing is when you were running these over governed speed, you couldn't have them full of oil because otherwise they'd blow a bunch of oil out of the breather. So we ran them about half full, and they were not meant for longevity. You never got a lot of life out of these engines. You were beating the crap out of them. So this starter gear looks like it's getting pretty bad. We'll see if that'll hold up for us. But I think I'll put some gas in it and get some hearing protection because it's awful loud, and we'll see if this thing will fire up. Well, I've got some gas in it. I put the lift down. I don't like starting stuff on the lift if I'm not sure if it's gonna, I don't know if it's gonna take off or anything. It is in neutral, but you just never know. And I have to start it with the jumper pack off the starter. So I did put a new spark plug in it, and just in case that one was rusty or anything. So I think we're ready to try firing it up. I've got the choke on, the keys on. Turn the choke off. My jumper pack squeals when I hook it up like that, so sorry for that noise. It's running for a little bit, but for some reason it doesn't want to go now. So I'll monkey with that a little bit. But it did actually run okay while I was holding the throttle down like that, so that's good. It was smoking a little bit, but it's probably to be expected. It's probably got junk in there and stuff from sitting that long. So I'll monkey with the carburetor a little bit and then I'll bring you back. There, I got it to idle. It always idled a little bit fast with that porting the way it was on there. But also the throttle shaft on the carburetor is a little bit worn too, so it'll make it idle a little fast. Well, I'm pretty happy with that. It seemed to run pretty decent. We'll see what it does when we actually get it out and drive it, but from what I can remember is I think I put a belt on it that was a little bit too long. This has a belt that runs to the front and then it runs to this variable pulley back here, and then it runs to another belt here, which I see was popped off of this. That idler is seized up here, so I might have to replace that before we get to test drive it, but that's not too big a deal as long as I have a pulley for that. So I guess that's the first thing we'll do, is replace that pulley there before we can test drive it. So that pulley down there is what I'm after. Let's see if I can get the impact underneath. Get that bolt out of there. Got some linkages and stuff in my way. Got the nut off of there. Well, I've got my spring hooked to the tensioner. Spring is hooked to that bolt. Like I said, it's been so long since I built this, I don't really remember all the stuff I did. There, we got the pulley out of there. I probably should have checked that before we ran it, because you could see that it totally destroyed that pulley. That's some good carnage there, but that pulley was seized solid from sitting out in the elements. So I'll go dig through my pile of used pulleys and see if I've got one like that. So I found a couple. This one, it's the same size diameter, but it's got a bigger flanges on it, so I don't know if that's going to cause issues in there for fitting. But then this one is a little bit smaller around, so I don't think the belt will get as tight with that. I mean, it shouldn't matter, it's just running on the outside edge of it, but we'll see if that makes a difference. I guess I'll try running that smaller one just to see what happens. Well, I got the pulley changed out. You can see that it kind of pulls the opposite way that it should. I ended up putting it between the belt, and then it widens as this pulley moves back. As you can see, if I squeeze it, there's a little bit of movement in this. That's what moves back when you shift the 1 through 7. It's not actually shifting gears in the transmission. This is your forward and reverse shifting, and right now I actually don't even remember which way is forward and reverse. I think to the left might have been forward. I don't know, we'll find that out once I run it, but I think that'll be good enough. And then I've got a spring that runs down over to here that runs the tension on that pulley. And then the front is just the stock size pulley, and then the back, I don't know if I can get you in there. Then the back here, it is just a 4-inch pulley that I ended up putting on there. And what I really should do is, this should really be a 5/8 belt, because that variable pulley runs 5/8 belts, and they actually run a different style belt. It's an MTD belt that's a little bit wider and has a different profile, but this one has been working well. I mean, I ran quite a few races with that, but we changed our belts pretty often when we were doing that. It wasn't like it was something that was, you're gonna go ride all day. This was made for more short runs and just playing around with on the weekends, and then we would end up replacing a bunch of stuff between races, usually just because you were just looking for the max performance for a short period of time. It's kind of like a drag race car, how some of them, they rebuild the engines after every race weekend. That's kind of the way these were rigged up, so they weren't for longevity, it was just for speed. But I think now we should be ready to see if it'll move under its own power. I know it always had trouble stopping. I had to kill the engine usually to get it to stop. It would always want to creep, and then when I was at the starting line, I would just jam it into gear, and then I would shift gears from here as I was going. And that transaxle has been pretty tough, but those have a very short lifespan when you're doing this, as I've replaced a ton of them in other mowers. This one actually lasted, I think, 4 or 5 years, but I shouldn't have said anything. Now with trying it out again, we might blow it up, but we'll see. So I'll get it outside and we'll fire it up again and go take it for a test drive. Well, I've got it outside. We're gonna give it a test. I'm pretty sure that belt that was on there was too long, so I'm not gonna get the full speed out of it that I normally would get, but we'll give it a try and see. I've got a fairly good straight stretch here that's not too rough, but it's kind of rough from riding the snowmobile on it, and then it froze everything. So, but I'll get it fired up and we'll test it out. Well, it died on me, as you could see, but it was running pretty good. The only thing is that front belt is too loose, so what happens is this clutch pedal, it'll come all the way around, and you can see when I speed up, I'm actually pulling on the back side of the clutch to get the belt a little bit tighter. So I have a 53-inch belt on there. I need to get a 52 on there. That's what was originally there, but they sold me the wrong size belt the last time I raced. I ended up losing terribly because of it, but we'll see if I can get it fired back up so we can run it back to the shop and maybe play around with it a little bit more. I kind of forgot how I would race it too. I would put it up to 4th gear here, and that's when I'd pop the clutch in, and then almost instantly I would jam it back to 7th, but that belt was slipping, so you could see I would spin out and then I'd lose the belt, so it would slip on me. But we'll see if we can get it fired up again. Well, the race mower died on me way out back, and I don't feel like trying to get it going way out there. I'm pretty sure we lost the coil. It seems like it's losing spark when it gets warm, and then I let it cool off a while, it'll fire up again, but it'll die after about 20 feet. So we'll see if we can get the 317 fired up, and this is the one we built the lift hitch on the back so we could tow it back with that. So we'll see if this will start. It's been below zero for quite a few days, so I might have to run and get the jumper pack for it, but we'll see. To get the jumper pack, it's just not turning over fast enough. I thought I almost had it, but I shouldn't have unchoked it that soon. I'll try it again with the jumper pack here. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time I've got to work on this thing today, and I don't have any parts for it, so I'm going to start collecting some stuff again for it. I'll get a coil for it, and we'll get a new belt on there. If you like this content with the race mower, let me know down in the comments, or hit the like button. I'll kind of know how popular this is. If it's popular, I'll keep going with it, and we'll refine it a little bit and perfect it. It's been a long time since I worked on one of these, so it's going to be a learning curve again to get it just right, but I think my GPS said we only did about like 22 miles an hour, so I know that it's not running right with that belt like that. So I'll get about an inch shorter belt on it, and we'll see how that works. But like always, if you like this sort of thing, like the videos and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.